Hi, it's Arjun. I've just wrapped up an especially busy 3-week travel stretch of doing various board, management, and industry events, and including have been various meetings in and around the power sector. As someone who spent his entire career on the other side of energy, oil and gas, it's really been a lot of fun ramping up on power. Now, historically, oil and gas and power have been really two very different businesses within energy. Different set of macro drivers, different set of corporate outlooks, and really different analysts that covered each of those two major areas. And while many major differences, of course, still remain today, we are seeing growing areas of convergence. And in this short video, we want to expand on some of the key takeaways from our recent travels, and we will expand upon these thoughts in future weeks. 5 major points we want to highlight. First, we think energy is in its 3rd major supercycle within my lifetime. I was born in 1969. The first, of course, were the Arab Oil Embargo years of the 1970s. I was just a kid then. The second was the China and BRICs expansion, EM growth, if you will, during the 2000s, during the heart of my Goldman career. Both of those were essentially crude oil events. The first, major geopolitical security issue. The second, of course, billion-person scale emerging market demand. The current supercycle marries both geopolitical security and the 1.4 billion person club of China, India, rest of Southeast Asia, and Africa, and their massive unmet energy needs. But it is power, not crude oil, that is at the heart of this supercycle. AI data centers and digitization, all these things rightfully get a lot of the sort of hot attention today. But aging developed market grids require significant new investment, and that is also a really important trend. But probably most importantly, it is that massive unmet energy needs of the other 7 billion people on Earth that are making this a global supercycle, and I'm going to argue is going to be the most important driver of global power needs in the coming decades ahead. This supercycle is all about power, and that is on multiple different fronts. Second point, and a key lesson from the failed energy transition era, is that the world clearly is going to need all forms of energy, including many newer technologies where the timing and scaling is still uncertain. Examples of those would be things like nuclear SMRs and perhaps enhanced geothermal, to name just 2. Power, it's really quite surprising. Power is an enabling driver of crude oil demand, especially in the developing world. And we suspect today this is most visible in Asia, where China seems to be dumping or selling at a very low price renewables into Africa. And the advent and the existence of power markets is becoming a driver of economic growth and is causing crude oil demand in Africa, 54, 55, maybe 56 countries, to start surprising to the upside. It's actually going to be the continent with the second fastest oil demand growth in 2025 after Asia. And I'm going to say that power is the enabling theme there in Africa. Third point, energy sources and technologies are not in competition with each other for a finite amount of global energy needs. That was, again, some of the rhetoric that we heard in that failed energy transition era. They are not in competition. Energy sources, we're not picking between this or that. That is the substitution argument that is being trotted out by those who I think believe most strongly in the energy transition. Rather, it is going to be relative economics, reliability, geopolitical security that are going to cause periods of stronger and perhaps weaker demand at various points for any number of energy sources and technologies. As an example, LNG priced at world oil prices is unlikely to displace coal in places like China and India. But LNG is a diversifying fuel for power grids, and therefore is likely to be some component of grids in those countries, even if they still have a substantial amount of coal. Diversification, key lesson in terms of having reliable and ultimately sustainable and affordable grids. LNG is also going to be a complementary fuel. It's going to help displace oil demand via things like LNG trucks. And so when we, again, think about LNG as just one example here that I spend a little bit of time on, I don't view it that there's some finite pool that either coal is taking it or LNG is going to take it. We're going to need all of it, but we're going to have to look at relative economics, cost of supply, and exactly how these markets develop. Energy is going to be additive as opposed to substitutive. Fourth major point we want to make, while crude oil cycles are inherently global in nature, power is typically highly local or perhaps regional. But today we have now this global element that is coming from billion-person scale developing world demand. So power, highly local, and still going to be local in most places, but there's this global overlay from really the developing market growth and I assume the AI data centers as well. Fifth, and the final point we want to make, we are perhaps most optimistic to see major energy consumers, in particular big tech and big industrials, starting to proactively engage in energy macro and policy discussions. It is an awesome trend to see. We see that at Veriton in our own business model. I think we're fortunate and are thankful that our client base, as we'll call it, has a diversifying group of companies, including some major energy consumers as part of it. And we certainly see it in all the meetings we've been attended, where you're starting to see representatives from a lot of these leading firms that you all would recognize. And this, in our view, significantly raises the odds that we move away from that very divisive rhetoric of the previous 4 to 5 years that characterized the energy transition era to one that appropriately prioritizes energy's natural hierarchy of needs that, of course, we have been regularly articulating in Super Spiked. So I'll end this video on a personal note. And I had the good fortune early this week in Houston to attend Arizona State University's unveiling of their new Future in Energy initiative. And Dr. Michael Crow, the president of ASU, he was on Veriton's Close the Business Tuesday podcast. It was probably a couple months ago, and I was very intrigued with his vision for some of the changes he saw that were needed and that he thought could really differentiate ASU. And I have to admit, as someone who grew up on the East Coast and still primarily lives there, I'm not super familiar with ASU. I myself went to University of Denver, so I've spent some time, outside of these sort of Ivy League and other elite institutions, and they can be quite refreshing. I think it's broadly recognized that some changes need to be made to how higher education has gone about things, that there is a need for actual inclusivity to respect a range of different viewpoints and perspectives, which I don't think it's too one-sided to say there's been an absence of that, especially in recent years, maybe recent decades. And it was very refreshing to hear the ASU president talk about these things. I would just encourage people on their own to look up what they're doing. I myself was honored to be part of this event, and I look forward to hearing from we need more and different voices to engage in this energy discussion. We need to move beyond the rhetoric of the last few years, very divisive rhetoric, and I'm excited to see ASU join the conversation. I'm excited to see big tech and big industrials join the conversation, and I would encourage all of you to speak up as and when you can. Thank you.